I'd recently realized that I couldn't say anymore when people, great-uncles, overzealous librarians, asked that I'd just finished college and that no one wanted to know now what I wanted to be. They wanted to know what I did, which was tutoring. Oh, tutoring. That must be so hard, interesting, wonderful. It was hard, in the sense that all of life, particularly the bits you have to spend with sullen 11-year-olds, is hard. And it was interesting, in that it meant I got to see a great number of strangers' kitchens and bedrooms and medicine cabinets packed with antidepressants and Vaseline. It was also wonderful, at the ends of sessions, when I would nod farewell to a parent or babysitter and spill back out into the world, free and light and finished. For the 2 years after college, I'd had a more conventional job, at a political magazine on Capitol Hill. This magazine was tiny and well-respected, perpetually on the brink of bankruptcy, overseen by its 80-something FDR-revering founder, staffed by young and exhausted and brilliant people who moved on after a year or two and haunted you forever after with their bylines. Every issue was an emergency, and in the middle of my first real assignment, something about the transformation of the domestic auto industry, I had a panic attack, my first in years, complete with a terrifying, mortifying ambulance ride, after which my boss made clear, if it wasn't clear already, that I was probably in the wrong line of work. So that spring I became a tutor, which seemed, along with being a nanny, to be one of the loopholes people my age had discovered in the professional world, a way of making a reasonable amount of money without working particularly hard or doing anything more soul-crushing than absolutely necessary. My mom and stepdad were appeased by the thought that I was just biding my time before going off to law school and becoming a public defender, which I still thought I might do, and I was appeased by the thought that I got to spend all my nights with Claire. I'd met Claire when we were undergrads, but we'd only known each other well enough to smile when we shared an elevator or when we passed each other in the library. She was one of the girls, of whom there were dozens at Penn, who I'd see and think, in another life, maybe, yes. Red hair, pale skin, freckles that weren't so much countable as a kind of wallpaper pattern. She was in things like improv troupes and student movies on the fringes of the theater crowd, but not quite so pretentious or pleased with herself as most of them seemed to be. She always had a boyfriend, usually another actor. I first saw her in D.C. at a party in Adams Morgan just before I left the magazine. It's always unsettling, seeing people you've almost but not quite forgotten about. Not because they've changed, she'd hardly changed at all, but because they've gone on existing, finding jobs and making friends and moving apartments, all without the help of your thinking about them. So there she was, Claire Breyer, standing in front of the little table that someone had set up with bottles of vodka and juice in red plastic cups. We hugged when we saw each other, despite never having hugged when we'd seen each other regularly. We carried our drinks over to the window, because even though it was April, the heat was on in the apartment, and while we talked, she fanned herself with her hand. She turned out to be living alone on U Street, working at a think tank, still doing improv on the weekends. She finished her vodka and poured herself another. She looked, I thought and think, like a girl who should live on a rocky beach in New England, drink enormous mugs of dark tea, dig up clams. You always seemed like such a dude, she said after we'd been talking for a while. I thought you were a flip cup kind of person. I thought you were a vocal exercises kind of person. Me. We hugged again before she left, more confidently than before, and she told me that I should come to her next improv show. I did, and that did it. There were, in those first weeks, afternoon coffees that ended with us on a bench near her office, her legs in my lap. There were mornings of having to unmake the bed to find our underwear. There was kissing goodbye on the metro platform. By that first fall together, we were spending almost every night at her apartment, reading next to each other in bed, having conversations between the shower and the bedroom. So I guess this is what it feels like, she said once, when we were leaning forehead to forehead, the only two people on the long escalator in Union Station. I wish I could take that year, like the salvageable bits of a meal dropped on the floor, and separate it from what happened next, which now seems minor, but which at the time seemed baffling and tragic and unbelievable. What happened is